give USC fans a primer on Tulane football here in 2022?
Well, the first thing that you need to know about this game, and I tweeted this out in the middle of the Tulane USC game, is you got to tackle Tyjae Spears. Tulane has one of the best tackle breaking running backs in college football. There's Bijan Robinson, who's supreme number one break tackle running back. Then you have your Dwayne McBride at UAB and Carson Steele at Ball State. I don't know how much you've watched of those guys, but they're supreme tackle breakers. And then there's Tyjae Spears. He's the AAC Offensive Player of the Year, and he's just got better as the competition has increased at the end of the season. Spears rides a 7-game streak of 120-yard rushing games, and he had 202 yards against UCF in the AAC title game. Week before that, had over 180 to clinch that AAC title game against Cincinnati. So Tyjae Spears has really taken control of this Tulane offense, and he's just somebody who can break tackles and really churns his legs and keeps him going throughout. So tackling Tyjae Spears is going to be your number one priority. But also Tulane against UCF showed something really interesting, and that's a dynamic passing attack, which wasn't really present in Tulane's offense all year. Their quarterback, Michael Pratt, had the game of his life against UCF with 394 yards and 4 passing touchdowns. And I think 3 of those passing touchdowns were over 40 yards. So Tulane was really showing explosive playmaking in that game. So I think this one could possibly get into shootout potential. Reminds me of the 2019 Cotton Bowl between Memphis and Penn State.
Yes.
Where Memphis had Penn State early up. They were up 17-7 in that early going. And then it just turned into teams trading punches offensively. Final score of 53-39 in there. AAC has not had a New Year's Six Bowl win since 2017, UCF's famous win over Auburn. So they made it every year since then. And they've really competed, other than Cincinnati against Alabama last year. Although I'd say that the game felt closer than the score. Alabama kind of beat them slowly rather than jackhammering them out of the gate. But the AAC, they've been competitive, but they haven't been winning these New Year's Six Bowl games recently.
Tell me about the chess match between Willie Fritz and Alex Grinch. How do you think Willie Fritz is going to attack USC's defense, and what do you think Alex Grinch needs to do to, just do damage control and limit just how many points Tulane's able to put up in Arlington?
It's going to start with a lot of Tyjae Spears, I think. I was really impressed with Tulane's scripted drives early on in that UCF game. That first drive, they got the ball, I think, on their own 15. They just funneled down the field just by about chunk plays of 5 to 15 yards every single play, throwing to the outsides, throwing short hitch routes. Taking what the defense gives them rather than trying to go for the explosive plays. And then by making one guy miss, that's how the explosive plays come for Tulane. It wasn't like Tulane was just chucking up 40-yard bombs every single play. It was more they were finding guys in man coverage and just trying to get one guy to miss, and then they were going to the house. So I think that Tulane's going to try to operate with a lot of Tyjae Spears, just basic inside zone plays, off tackle runs, and then try to hit some of its receivers on the outsides or get them on a slant and man coverage and see if they can make explosive plays from there.
All right. Now, one thing to note for the USC fans watching here at the Voice of College Football is that Tulane and UCF played twice. And UCF won the first game, but Tulane got the rematch. So take us through the adjustments that Tulane made in the rematch based on, flowing from the first game and what UCF was able to do well. So when Lincoln Riley and Alex Grinch, I'm sure they're going to look at the second game, of course. It's the most recent Tulane game, and it's a game in which Tulane played well. So they're certainly going to show that film to their USC players saying, whoa, this is how good Tulane can be on offense. But I'm sure they're also going to look at that first game to show, hey, this is how you contain Tulane. This is, you can do things to bottle up this offense a little bit. So take us through a comparison of the two games and the adjustments that were made, but also the good things that UCF was able to do defensively to contain Tulane in the first meeting.
Well, in that first game, it was a lot of UCF's rushing offense gashing Tulane's run defense. UCF had over 200 team rushing yards in the first half, and a lot of it was John Rice Plumlee, their running quarterback, who had a severe hamstring injury in the second game, was pulled for, I'd say, the majority of the contest, and just had to return to the game because the true freshman backup clearly was not ready for that stage. and UCF's offense was going 3 and out every single time with a true freshman. So they brought Plumlee back in the game. UCF had a mini comeback in the conference championship, got it down to 3 points in the fourth quarter. Then Tulane pulled ahead and won. I'd say some of the differences were the ways Tulane attacked the trenches, especially on defense. With a nicked up quarterback who's not able to run as much, of course you're going to get more sacks, but it just felt like they were able to shed UCF's blocks a lot better in the second game. In the first game, UCF was doing a really good job of pass protection and run protection against Tulane's defensive line, but I thought Tulane really solved that with their schemes in the second game. And their defensive end, Darius Hodges, was touching on that in the press conference. He was saying how well the defensive line coach prepared their adjustments, gave different fits against the run, and also better pass rushing techniques. And they were able to get 6 sacks and 9 tackles for loss in that second game after getting just 0 sacks and 4 tackles for loss in the first matchup. So winning the trenches was one of the key adjustments that Tulane made in order to win the AAC after losing in that first game. And they really stepped up their run defense in the second game. I thought they were better at halting the running backs, but I think a lot of that was also attributable to UCF playing a backup quarterback for a lot of the game. So that kept the Knights offense a little one-dimensional. They weren't able to throw with the backup quarterback in the game. So Tulane could just key on the run there because they weren't going to throw anything more than 10 yards down the field with him because it didn't really look capable at the time. So that's one of the things that you could notice from game to game. But I also thought that just Tulane just did a better job of attacking the Knights on the boundaries and finding UCF defenders in one-on-one coverage and just burning them and winning individual matchups. So that's one adjustment that they made the latter game.
All right, let's flip it to the other side of the ball. So USC is going to be missing a couple of important offensive linemen, but both due to injury and also the NFL draft. So does Tulane have the personnel up front to bottle up USC's running game the way Utah was able to? You know, we have Larry Pilgrim here, our Utah analyst, and he's made the point that, you know, Utah had to go into its backups on the defensive line. You know, Fillinger, Ellis, you know, 2 of its best defensive linemen were not available in the Pac-12 championship game, but the backups were able to do the job against USC's banged up offensive line. So Utah's defensive backups were better than USC's offensive backups. In terms of Tulane's personnel up front, is that defensive line stout enough to take advantage of the USC offensive line deficits that we're going to see in the Cotton Bowl?
It's not even close to Utah's defensive line, I would say. And the biggest difference, I think, is in the defensive tackles. The Utah's nose guards, like Junior Tafuna, like those guys, they have size. They're good at plugging up those run gaps in the middle. And I just don't know if Tulane has the firepower and the depth to provide what Utah did, especially in the middle of the offensive line. So I think Darius Hodges, he's really good around the edges. He's a good pass rusher. He has some good pass rush moves. But I do think that USC's offensive line, I think that they could impose their will on Tulane, and they could pick up a lot of running yards in this game, I would say. The strength of Tulane's defense lies in the linebackers and the safeties. And that's where Dorian Williams and Nick Anderson, 2 star linebackers that have been with the program for a while, line up. And then the safeties are really good, I would say, at stopping the run. They're guys, and they're good at stopping short pass plays. They're hard hitters up there. But I just don't know if they're going to be able to shed some of these blocks from USC. USC had a fantastic offense all season long. We saw them go shootout for shootout against UCLA. We saw it against Utah in the first matchup that they had in Salt Lake City. And this team can score points, and a lot of it was the foundation up front. Now, I don't know if Tulane's going to be able to penetrate that and really make an impact there, which is why I said earlier that if USC's tackling isn't fixed, I could see this one going into shootout form like that Penn State-Memphis game in 2019.
Very simple follow-up to that larger question of the matchup between Tulane's front 4 and USC's offensive line. So what's the approach for Tulane in this game? Do you try to blitz, stack the tackle box, load up, be really aggressive in terms of having guys near the line of scrimmage, or do you play the sit back game? Have 7 guys in coverage and you just try and make sure that USC's receivers can't beat you over the top, and you allow for that death by 1,000 cuts with Austin Jones. You allow the 5-6 yards of carry. That means you're not giving up 45-yard chunk plays. Or do you think you have to take away that running game, and so that Tulane's offense can be on the field longer. So like maybe if you put everybody near the line of scrimmage, okay, you might give up a few home runs, but that also means that your defense is not on the field for as long a period of time, and you just entrust this game to your offense and you try to win this game 49-42. Which do you think is the better approach for Tulane in this game?
I like the theory of trying to make USC beat you death by paper cuts, dropping 7-8 on a play, because USC has so much talent in the wide receiver room and they run super deep there that I'm a little concerned with Tulane's corners or nickelbacks about containing those guys. But I do look at the AAC championship game and say this team is best when they're aggressive and they're trying to stop the run and they're trying to limit teams there. I mean, they beat Kansas State with some of the most aggressive defensive play calling that I've seen all year. Kansas State, I think, went 1 for 5 on fourth downs that game, and most of those were fourth and shorts. So this Tulane team was very aggressive on some of those plays where, if you don't stop him at the line of scrimmage on some of those fourth and shorts, he's to the house. And I think that's how Tulane operates best, is going aggressive, especially in those short yardage situations. So, but theoretically, just against USC's wide receiver core, you don't want them to get those explosive plays on you. So it's an interesting debate, and I think that Tulane could try to experiment with both in the early going and see which way they prefer later on in the game. But I really think that's an intriguing style matchup in this game.
All right, Steve Helwick, SB Nation's Underdog Dynasty and Hustle Belt. Steve does a tremendous job, and please follow him on Twitter. You see his handle there. He loves the NBA. Of course, college football, he's got it nailed there as well. Steve, we appreciate you stopping by. Is there anything in particular that you would like us to highlight in regards to your recent work?
Not anything specific. I'm hitting up, I believe, 4 bowl games this season. Frisco Bowl on Saturday, North Texas, Boise State. That could be a good one. Then there's Armed Forces Bowl, Baylor Air Force the following week. Cheez-It Bowl in Orlando, Florida State, Oklahoma. It's a nice helmet matchup. And Florida State's been really underrated team late in the season. Seminoles have been rolling through opponents ever since 3 close losses early in the season. And then the final game would be the Cotton Bowl, Tulane, USC. I've done 2 Cotton Bowls before. I did the Wisconsin, Western Michigan one, and then the Penn State, Memphis one. I think this is another intriguing matchup, and I think it's cool that I started the season covering USC week 1. I ended the season covering Tulane in the AAC championship game, and now those 2 teams come together for a bowl game. So I think that's a perfect way to wrap up my 2022.
And we thank you for helping us from day one until the bowl game.
Absolutely.